Hi, let's get started on this beautiful winter solstice. First things first, I have taped my paper down and I'm working upright, kind of in that portrait orientation. I do have my little palette here for mixing paint colors. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my water, and I'm going to put water in a few of these little compartments so I can mix some paint colors to use. Now, if you don't have a palette like this, most people don't, you can use the lid of your paint pan, or you can just use a dish from the kitchen. If it's something that's very, very smooth, the lid of your paint pan usually will have little compartments in it that'll make it easier for you to mix. So I'm going to just add water to my palette. If you are asking for gifts at the holiday time, this is always a good little gift to ask for. It's just a porcelain mixing palette. What I like about it is it's very easy to clean, and the walls are high enough that the colors don't jump into each other. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to mix a few colors. Some of these I'm just going to put in to make them watery, because we don't want any super heavy color in our sky today. So I'm going to mix, like this is just a light blue. And I know this sounds silly, but I'm going to mix a very light black so that we have a gray and we don't have that heavy, heavy black. But we do have some gray that we can bring in. And then a little bit of purple. Simply to mix a very light, watery purple. And then let's also mix a very light, watery yellow. That may be all the colors we need. I'm not certain. We'll see. And then I think I'm going to mix a blue and black. So I'll grab some blue. And a tiny bit of black. That might be more than a tiny bit, huh? If you get too much black, you can always simply add a little bit more of the blue and a little more water. And that'll get it nice and navy for us. There we go. So now we've got all these lovely colors mixed. I'm going to stick them right over here because we might still use some of these, but for this particular painting, everything's going to be very simple, very light, very, very nice. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is take some of this navy blue color, and I'm not going to get a lot of it in my brush, just a bit. I'm going to make my horizon line. And I'm not just painting a line. I'm going to drag my brush this way very gently. And watch how that just kind of appears. And then we can drag back and forth a little bit, all of these ways, and make our ground. Then I'm going to get a little bit of my light blue, and sometimes that pigment will settle. I'll get my light blue, and I'm going to add a little bit of that light blue down here. Maybe get just water, more of that blue, and sort of scribble over and under the places I added that first blue. This part is very abstract, so it doesn't have to look like something. It can just look like what it looks like. But we want to leave plenty of that white showing through, and we want to have some of those little rough strokes, because that's what makes it look like the ground and like it's cold. So the grays are just our little shadows. All right, so that's our ground. Easy peasy, right? And if you want to, you can fan that a little bit to ask it to dry more quickly. But it's not a whole lot of water, it's not a whole lot of paint, so we should be fine letting it dry on its own. All right, then we're gonna skip up to the top of our painting. And I'm gonna jump in first, just with water. And I'm gonna paint the top part of this painting. Almost all the way down with a light coat of water. This doesn't have to be a very heavy, thick, soupy coat of water. This can just be simple, light coat. We're just adding a little water. We don't want to super saturate. I mean, fuzz is just coming out of my brush. That's always fun. And I'm not going to touch this horizon line. I don't want to do that because I know that it might still be wet. I just want to get this part here, excuse me, a little wetter. I'm going to add a tiny bit more purple to my light purple. But I don't want to go straight from the paint pan onto the paper. All right, so this is watered down, and here in the corners, I'm going to run some purple, maybe kind of in like a rounded shape. And add some water to the bottom so it fades up nicely, very gently. And then I can go up in this top part and add a little more of the color. So I want my edges to be darker. And I'm trying to keep this edge wet just so that as this paint moves across, we don't have that harsh line. And I'm going to come in with my diluted blue. I don't want to go straight from the paint pan onto the paper right now. And I'm going to blend that blue right at that nice little arc of purple. But I'm still keeping this lovely little arch right here. And then I can kind of slowly blend that blue and purple together. You can dot it, you can swirl it, whatever works well for you. And it doesn't need to be dark for this to be really, really beautiful. All right. Now I want to come down and make sure this is very, very, very wet. And I'm going to go right by that horizon line because my horizon line is dry now. So I want these to... And right along the edge of that horizon line, excuse me, I'm going to pick a place where my sun is peeking through. And I'm not going to make a perfectly round sun. I'm just going to go into this yellow very gently and find a place to add a little bit of that yellow brightness along the edge. And it can slowly creep up from this edge here toward the top. But what I'm trying to make it not do is mix with the blue, because I don't want like a green color. I just want a little brightness down here at that horizon line. And then we have a bit of white space, which is fine. went into the wrong color. So I'm just watering my yellow down before I add any to the paper. So we just want a nice slow, and I've got some that's trying to creep here, so I'm going to dry out my brush and lift some of that right off the paper. So we'll get rid of that extra water, and then it's trying to creep up there, so I'm going to get rid of that too. Okay, now if we want, we can go back and add a little more purple through the top and the edges, and a little more of that blue along the purple, and along throughout, whatever works well for you. I'm always going to bring it over here and water it down before putting it on the paper. Just gonna let this kind of dry however it's gonna dry. I think it's gonna be great. If you want, you can throw some salt up there. That's completely up to you. I am not gonna put any salt right now just because I want to be able to use my little hair dryer to dry this. So I don't want to add salt immediately, because to get the full effect, the beautiful effect of that salt, I need to let it dry kind of naturally. So now I'm gonna dry this. I'm gonna use my little piece of paper to fan it. And when it gets to the point that I think I can use my hair dryer without blowing the paint here, there, and everywhere, I might do that. But for now, I'm just gonna use this method. All right, sometimes the hairdryer can make your tape come up, so we're gonna smush that tape back down. Okay, now we can add vegetation. So you can add trees, bushes, little like field grass, whatever you want. I'm gonna add some trees, and your trees don't have to be like brown perfect trees. This is a time when there's not a lot of light, so sometimes your tree can just be in silhouette, maybe. So I'm going to take some brown and add it to my watered down black. Oops, that's purple. I'm going to get some brown, add it to my watered down black, and then I'll add a little more black to that. So I have kind of a dark grayish brown color. And I'm going to make a tree branch, a tree trunk. And it's kind of hard because you have this beautiful landscape and you might not want to put something on it, but I'm just going to go for broke. So I'm going to kind of start here and go up with my brush. And then maybe I'll add another one here. But I'm going to go sideways up with that brush. And then I'll add a little more color. This one here is being a little resisty. So I'm going to tell it, no, I would like for you to not be so resisty. And you can have as many trees as you want, and the ones that are further back are going to be a little smaller and a little shorter. So then you can have like far away trees. And then you can give them branches. So The first branch is going to be sort of thicker. I need a little more color in this paint. First branch is going to sort of be thicker. These are just easy little branchy branches. You just sort of keep making a Y, and it gets thinner and thinner as you go toward the end. And sometimes that can be difficult to do. But that's okay. It's not too difficult. I know that you can do it. And then sometimes we don't see all of those other branches over there. And they can cross over. They can overlap. Can go off the page. I just enjoy drawing those little tiny branches. And what's nice is as you draw more branches, you run out of paint in your brush, so you can make smaller lines. So I'm going to then take this and make it a little bit bigger. All right, so there's one tree. And I'm going to do that to some of the other trees. Make this a tiny bit more opaque. We'll come back and keep making it more and more opaque. But we want those ones in the background to be lighter. So these ones back here are just going to have some tiny branches. You can always come back later and add more branches. And then I'll keep doing that same thing to my other trees back here. And the ones that are further away are littler, because that's just how perspective works. And then this one I think needs to be a little closer to make this one a big fat tree that's right here. I'm just making more and more of these little Ys that are coming off my tree. And these all can overlap. And the closer we get to this foreground, the more branches we're going to have, because we can see these trees in great detail. So just keep making your Ys. We know that these trees can go off the side of the page, and that's all right. All right, now we can add a little more brown and a little more black, and we can get like a thicker paint. So we're getting more opaque as we get toward the front here. So this tree is going to have some dark shade on the side. And this one too. So this one on the outside is going to have some darker shade. Toward the bottom, it's going to have some darker shade. And then this one's going to have some darker shade over here on this side. And maybe we'll even give this friend a little bit of dimension. But as they get further away, they don't need as much of that dark color. We can line here along the back of some of these branches. They can have that darker feel to them. But as we get toward the center where that lighter part is, we don't have quite as much of that dark color. And same here. We're going to stay along the back edges of these branches with our shade. This did not go as rough as I wanted it to kind of look a little rougher. There we go. And then we can have some shade actually coming off of our trees. So I'm going to head back into this blackish blue color. And my shade is going to kind of go this way. So this tree's shade is going to be this direction. And this tree's shade is going to go over here. And this tree's shade is going to kind of start right here and go back and down and maybe out. This one's going to go back. This one's going to go back this way. This one's going to go straight back. And this one's going to go back also, just like that. So that's our shade coming off of those trees, and that shade gets longer as it gets further away from the ground there. So there's some shade. And what I'm going to do up here at the top to make it a little crystally, this is some salt that I'm dissolving in water. So the water's already got salt in it. It's got a lot dissolved. These were my larger chunks of salt. So here toward the top, I don't think it's going to totally dissolve, but there's salt in this water. So here toward the top, I'm going to kind of cover this bottom part of my image right now. And I'm going to dip in this salty water and do some little speckling with just clear salty water. And that's going to make it look kind of misty and snowy up there. Sometimes we don't have white paint, so we can't do white snow. However, we can use some salty water to add a snowy look. All right, I guess we can add a little more down here. We'll just see what happens, right? No harm in experimenting. So that's going to make that really nice and fun. And then over here we can do some, you know, like just weeds or tall grass coming up off of this edge. So I'm going to use that same blackish brown, but I'm going to maybe mix it a little bit lighter. And then maybe I'll put just the tiniest bit of yellow into it. So now I have this brownish color. And from the sides, I'm just going to make some quick swipes upward, and kind of inward. And these can be up around the trees too. I'm adding just a little bit of these tufts of grass here and there. And then we can add a tiny bit more black to it. Because as we get closer to us, it's going to be a little darker. And it doesn't matter if these all kind of run together, that's fine. I just want that top edge to be nice and scratchy looking. And I want the bottom to be, I want there to be like a line of the darkness along the bottom. So I'm going to grab some blue just to make it feel darker and shadier down here. A little cooler on the edges. There we go. And then I'm going to put some speckles on the bottom, but at the top, how we did the salt on the bottom, I'm just going to do that in my blue color. So let's get some of this blue in my brush and I'll cover the top and I'll sort of speckle the bottom. There we go. I might speckle the bottom with some yellow. I'm just wondering what it's going to look like if I do that. Here I go with my experimenting. Oh, I like it. And you can come back as often as you want and add more darkness to these trees if you feel like they need it. So I might do a little bit of that. And if you have the white, you certainly can add some snow. There's no rules against that for sure. You can keep adding more branches, more shading. Give it some little birds in your trees if you want to. Up to you. You can have whatever you want living in your trees, coming out of your trees. If you have white paint, you could always speckle on some snow. That's fun every time. Oh, I have some dogs doing some barking. And you know why? Because the other dogs in the neighborhood are barking. So when everyone's doing it, you have to join in, right? That is how my dogs see the world. All right, I'm overworking these trees is what's happening here. Sometimes it's hard to know when to stop because it's kind of fun to make these trees, right? Oh, there's Pepper. She's not cool with the neighbor getting home and opening their car door. The sheer audacity of people. I'm now realizing I have a tree here that has no branches coming out of it. So this is about to get about to have a tree party right here. I guess these trees can have lower branches too. That's fine. Just gonna try to make all my trees look similar. All right, and then I'm gonna just speckle some regular old water up at the top because I can. All right, I'm gonna let this dry a little bit, or actually, I'm gonna dry the bottom part a little bit. And then we can make like some little close-up silhouettes of like just little dried grasses or flowers. Like we might have some grass grassy pieces coming up here. And we might have some little field plants. Maybe some little dried little winter flowers. That are just a little round brown ball at the top right now because it's very cold, very wintry. Little things like that. You can kind of just make a bunch of dots and then give them some stems. You can do some little dots over here, some stems. And some little shorter grasses. This is all just about layering, letting the layer underneath it dry, and layering some more until you get to the point where you feel like it looks nice and dark over here and very light and airy and lovely there. I'm kind of just adding a little more black each time. And then I'll dry this. And I'll go back into my darker paint. And like I said, each layer just gets smaller and darker. And it's going to be darker toward the edges, darker and taller toward the edges. And we keep it sort of light down through the middle. So I think we might be almost there, almost. Almost. You might be there. Sometimes I go a lot further than I need to, but that's the part of the process I enjoy, so I'm just going to keep doing it. But I want these edges to be darker. And then as we move to the center, it gets lighter. You could always, if you have white paint, you could always come back and put some snow dots or like some snow on the tree branches. But if you don't have white paint, that's okay, because we have made it seem like it's very light simply by leaving areas unpainted, haven't we? All right, I'm going to dry and add one more layer, and then I'm going to be done. All right, so one more layer of my dark, dark, dark. Maybe I'll add a tiny bit more black for this one. So one more layer, and these are going to be all really short, and it's not going to be a lot of them in the middle. These are just our little grassy friends peeking in from the sides. And I'm just going to blend that into the tree. All right, so I think we're done. And now it's time. I'm going to dry it, and then I'm going to peel the tape off. I will sign it with my marker. And there is my little winter solstice. I hope that yours is turning out well. I hope it's feeling very peaceful. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and I'll see you next time you join me.